Good evening. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if tech problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. Viewers can visit the local scene.media/Duxbury/formerly PAC TV to watch a video replay of this meeting on Duxbury YouTube. Thank you. So tonight we are preparing for the special town meeting that is scheduled for June 16th. And we will be covering the MBTA and the auxiliary apartment, all under the auspices of the planning board. Megan is here to help us with that is part of the task force, and our interim planner, Rebecca, I don't know your last name. Roughly is here, as our interim planner to help us to go over these two articles.
Do you want to do minutes first?
We do have minutes that were, as we go through and we're trying to catch up on minutes. These were minutes that reared their ugly head from 2023. So might be nice if we approve them.
That's it, we're all too old to remember.
Well,
I don't even know what I had for breakfast. So yeah, there's that.
I did read them and I had a couple of questions.
Great.
Okay, go ahead. Did you really? God love you.
It was, I think in the future, if Linda, if you could, when we did move line 122 and you're trying to match up with the warrant, I don't know which budget was which budget at first, so I tried to match them up and I did, I think. And the questions I have relate to a few that don't seem to match with anything we talked about. On the second page, it was Mr. Kent moved line item 691. And that was in the middle of the general government budgets. So hold on a second.
That's right.
691 doesn't really exist. So I wasn't sure what that would pertain to, that we moved, seconded, and voted 7-0. The one that was missing, hold on a second. I think I had one that was missing. I think it was municipal services at 241. But, oh, wait a minute, wrong page, general government. No, I think we had them all. So I don't know what that one is, so I just question what that vote was.
Well, why don't we do this?
And then I have more,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
trust
ahead.
me. Flipping ahead. Flip. Oh yeah, way towards the end, I couldn't tell you what page, because the pages aren't numbered. But it had to do with Mr. Kent again moving line 84, which is out of sequence.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. So just those two, I think that's not a disaster by any stretch, Linda. But those two votes, I just, for the life of me, don't know what they pertain to.
So,
I was brand new.
Other than those two, I would vote it.
Pertain to me.
right, but we should be able to tick and tie with the amount.
Well, there's no amount.
Was
That's,
it on the
that's
omnibus
the problem.
budget, Fran? Was that what you were looking at? Was the omnibus budget? With the big sheet that rings?
No, I was working off the warrant
Off
and
the
matching up the
warrant, yeah.
the line items with these items.
Yeah.
And most of the match, but those two I couldn't
Oh.
reconcile.
And they're totally out of sequence.
Yeah, that's why I think one of them, the second one might be the library, because I couldn't find the library being moved and seconded. Whether we maybe, but when maybe we had moved, if we had voted it previously, so I can't guarantee that's the answer, so. Just
So-
those two. I'll give you my notes, Linda, and you can see the progression where it falls. I
Did
think
they-
other than those two, I'd be willing to move. To approve the minutes. As
Well, why don't we find out what those two lines are? It shouldn't be that hard.
it's like,
It doesn't matter.
but anyway,
Okay.
we'll wait
well,
till we get it.
You moved out second. Fran moved out second.
Okay.
Did a hell of a job.
All right, friend, thank you. But what is it that you would want to see amended in these minutes to?
I'd like to know
clarify?
what those two line items were that we moved,
I'm looking,
seconded and voted,
I'm looking at, so that, because they don't tie back to
the warrant.
The
the warrant, okay.
Right.
Contact back to you.
They're, I'm sure they're tied back to the budget that, that we went through.
Well, I think the first one might be historical commission,
Yeah,
129 instead of 691.
okay.
And the other one I think would be the library. But 84, but it should be
Why
something
don't
else.
you give your notes to Linda, and then it sounds like it's gonna be a fairly straightforward.
Yeah, other than that, there was no other issues.
Right, and I'd rather wait and vote them when we actually know what we voted.
Okay.
So why don't we wait on that one? And I probably have, not with me, but at home, all of that junk anyway. All right,
Which was awesome.
no, it's not as bad as you would think. Get rid of mine.
You were there.
I do have a wine cellar, but I do not have that, no. All right, so let's do what we're here for, and we will start with, do you want to start with MBTA?
Whatever you want to do.
Well, I'm just trying to be respectful of your time. Brian, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. You drive the bus on which one you want to do first?
Yeah, I don't think EDU will take too long, and I did get the PowerPoint and Emily, and I just forwarded it to you.
You got it online. I thought it's on the website.
Okay, mission,
Yes.
alright,
All right,
okay,
Not yet. We're gonna
yeah,
do
I
it
was
first.
just making sure that you had it.
You got this. Not the backup.
So we're just gonna do ADU
Cover all
now.
of these.
Did you get this?
okay, so we are now looking,
Article 2.
Article 2.
It's page 25 of 35 of the warrant that starts. So I circulated a memo. I know that everybody just kind of saw it now. If you've had a chance to scan it and read it over. It's basically just an overview of, the state's ADU bylaw and, how Duxbury kind of, formulated their own, bylaws. So you already had an accessory apartment bylaw, so we're basically going to be deleting that entire section and replacing it with the protected use accessory dwelling unit bylaw. I don't know if everybody has actually read, if you want me to just field questions on specific areas of the bylaw, or
I think just a quick synopsis of what the bylaw,
Okay.
the changes that we're facing and what the bylaw
okay.
entails.
Yeah, so like I said, the other one is getting completely deleted and replaced with this protected use ADU bylaw. It was a template that KP Law had, and they brought it, I want to say 3 or 4 times in front of the planning board, and the planning board tweaked it to fit Duxbury's needs, particularly with the characteristics of what your single family homes look like. And you can see in the memo that I sort of highlighted the top 10 sort of key provisions of the bylaw. So there's 1 parking space is required. The ADUs must meet all the building code compliances. You're preserving your single family characteristics. They have to be within your setback and height requirements. Another big one that a lot of people ask is the sewage and health considerations. So making sure that the sewage disposal conforms with the Board of Health regulations. And then another big one that I've seen come up is that you want to make sure that your short-term rentals are still prohibited. So I highlighted that in red in the memo just to make sure that everybody saw that. That's not changing. And people will need to come in front of the board to do site plan review before they put one up. So on top of having to pull a building permit, they'll need to do site plan review.
And that's just for the municipal services and stuff, is the site plan review. It doesn't go to a planning board. So
I
not
think it is,
restricted, there's a
I
public
think it
hearing.
is planning board. I looked at between this and the MBTA. I get it.
it just says on your site plan review, the detached ADU required the review, including a public hearing and application to abutters. Is that in front of the plan?
I think it's the planning board, yeah, I'd have to go back to section 615. But I believe it is the planning board, I can look that up right now.
Are there any additional fees that can be levied to build an ADU? Is there anything can be generated? The ADUs?
Other than additional tax revenue, I think it would just be your standard building permit fees and then site plan review fees. So they would fall under those categories,
So
but
there's
not like a specific ADU fee.
So it would it be considered a separate? I may not be able to, but a separate tax entity. There's a principal property, right? And then the ADU, would that be like a standalone under the tax?
I don't know, I'd have to ask.
I doubt that
the
because when
assessor.
the assessor looks at a 2-family or a 3-family, it's the value of the whole, not the separate
Right.
unit, not the separate. And this would not be any different than a 2-family.
But it's not connected, that's why I'm,
Doesn't matter.
It could be taxed.
109s, which are multiple dwelling, one lot is one bill.
okay.
So, yeah,
So it would be one, there's one tax bill, presumably it would be reassessed to increase value.
Yeah.
Increase value of the property.
Sorry.
That's okay. As far as the septic goes, and I know that's what helps, but there's no, we don't have any of the restrictions of what's going to apply to our septic. Explained to us, so I don't know, like. Will the new units be able to tie into the current septic system? If there's bedrooms left in the septic system?
Yes, if there's bedrooms left.
And the lot coverage still remains at 15%?
I don't know what your provision is for that, I have to look that up.
that is a provision.
So that's a question, whether the building, and then. I'm somewhat concerned about the septic because I think down the road,
Right.
we're gonna have an issue with septic in the town anyway, so. I don't wanna overload, I like the idea of the ADU, but I don't wanna overload the septic for. You know, we gotta do the best we can with that,
I think
without,
that's a valid
without spending
concern.
millions and millions of dollars on the septic system.
Yeah, they will have to follow the Board of Health regulations when it comes to title.
So I would, before I do any action on it, I just wanna know what the Board of Health regulations are.
Okay,
It would be the number of bedrooms that the house, the
Yeah,
system
what's-
is qualified for, but what you're asking is if they are getting this, is that going to be revisited?
Are they gonna allow 2 septic systems on the same lot?
Oh, God.
I actually know the answer to that, because I asked. They are, if the lot allows it. So
If the lot's big enough,
Correct. So
It
you
would
can
have
have
to
a
be huge.
1-bedroom septic system installed for your 1-bedroom ADU. If your septic system is only 4 bedrooms and you have 4 bedrooms already in the home. I did ask that question,
so, okay, so,
but it would only be if the lot would allow 2
but the
septic
ADU
systems.
can be 2-bedroom
Yeah, only 900 square feet.
or 3-bedroom.
900 square
900
feet
square
or
feet.
half the size of the house,
Exactly.
So whichever's
less.
whichever's.
So the maximum 900,
Whichever is smaller,
Yeah,
yes,
so it can't exceed 900 square.
right.
No,
So you would
no.
hard for us to get 2 bedrooms in there, but
And that's gross floor space?
It's 900 or half the size of the house, whichever is less.
No,
So
whichever
the
is smaller.
maximum would be 900.
Right,
Okay.
and is that gross floor space or is that foundation? In other words, can you have 2 stories at 450 apiece?
You can.
Yes.
but you'd have to meet the height restriction.
No. He's not asked that. So when you're doing density, I don't know where you're headed with this. When you're doing density, there's a restriction on, like 15%. Do it. So if you've got and I can speak for myself, a 20,000 square foot lot, then all I could have was 3,000 square feet, right? Not
Right, I got
3,001, but it was this foundation size. It wasn't 4.1 and 4.2. It was whatever the
different.
foundation, it also included a garage and it included everything, but it was just the square footage of the foundation, not on the GLA, which would include second floor.
And then the only other thing I got is this reference way down on page 27 and stuff, there's reference to the building commissioner. So I know we have a zoning officer. We've got a building inspector, but I didn't know we had a building commissioner in town.
He is the building commissioner by the state. So they,
The zoning officer?
Jim
Same guy.
was, yeah, it's the same guy.
Yeah, okay, I just,
Yeah, our building
It's in-
inspector is our commissioner, it's just tomato, tomato.
We're not hiring someone.
no, I wasn't, I was just.
Yep.
Making sure the terminology matched
It does, yeah.
positions that we actually have in
They
town.
must have taken the state language for this.
Yeah.
So is
It
this requirement, is this another one of the state requirements that, yeah, you're gonna do this?
Technically, yes, because as of February 2nd, they are allowed by right.
So we don't get to fine tune this to anything less than what the state is saying we
Correct.
have to do.
Correct.
With that said, though, Betsy, if I may,
Sure, please do.
this is kind of the opposite of MBTA in that the ADU statute comes in and just exists, and the municipalities can make it more restrictive, which is what Duxbury is doing. That's what Rebecca and the planning board have put together and presenting to you tonight. The MBTA, the other thing makes things less restrictive, and that's something that we're gonna have discussion as well.
So I think it would be,
But my point is, if we don't do this, the ADUs will be less restrictive.
right, but I think that that's the compare and contrast that they're gonna be looking for at town meeting. Is this is what the state mandates that we should be able to do, but what Duxbury is doing above and beyond this is X, Y, and Z. And that's the information that the town meeting is gonna want. And I don't see that yet. Do I? Or compare and contrast with the
difference
state,
between the
the
two.
state and the town of Duxbury and what the planning board is recommending that is in excess of what the state says that we need to do.
I think mostly it's the fact that you can't, before you could say that you could have an ADU with a special permit. And you can't tell them that they can't go through the special permit process, but you can restrict it by doing site plan review. And making sure that they,
Right, no, I'm not debating what the restrictions are, I'm just saying that when you go to town meeting. Save yourself the heartache, just, this is what the state is mandating, and this is what we've done above and beyond that. These are the differences between the state and Duxbury, and just make it simple. And because if you stand up and somebody asks you and you're charged with explaining it, it is going to be a word salad, very difficult, because anything to do with zoning turns people's minds to mush.
yeah. I think Christine is gonna be doing that, so.
Somebody needs to,
Talk to her.
I'm just saying, somebody needs to.
So if somebody currently has an illegal ADU on the property, will they be grandfathered in?
Look at him giggle.
So in other words, the people that are currently renting their accessory buildings illegally.
They're in-law apartments, let's call them in-law apartments.
On a short-term rental basis. VRBO, vacation, right? It's not supposed to be happening, but it is. So. Because they're already doing it. Once we pass this law, will they be grandfathered in and still be able to illegally rent on a short-term basis?
I don't think this
Based on
has
what
anything
this
to
says,
do
there
with the
would still be
short-term
illegal
basis.
use because they don't allow short-term rentals.
But we're not doing anything about the illegal use now.
Right,
I think
we're
he does
gonna ignore, we're
enforce
gonna
it.
continue to ignore it.
There's nobody to enforce it, right? There's nobody if you have a legally, renting out vacation with VRBO or Airbnb, there's no staff to send somebody down and write you the fine. Right? So presumably you could have this on the books, and there's apparently more rigor to this, right? For the ADU than we currently have with what's currently happening in town, in last week being rented out to various people that are in law.
Anyway, I'm good with it.
I don't think this is attempting
Al
to,
has his hand.
oh, I'm sorry, Al, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could, I wanted to just comment on what JR brought up about the septic systems, and I point to paragraph 10B, administration and enforcement, which says, I'll read it in the middle. It's no permit shall be issued until a sewage disposal works permit, when applicable, has first been obtained from the Board of Health and the proposed building and location thereof conform with the town's bylaws. So that kind of is in there. But I have a more broad question with respect to paragraph A of that section 10, which is, it shall be the duty of the building commissioner, and I'm not troubled by that generic language. I think it fits fine, to administer and enforce the provisions of this bylaw. The following paragraph sets some standards, which I just referred to, but the bylaw as it's written, and this is not a criticism, is silent as to administration and enforcement. If somebody, and you were just touching on this with the in-law apartments, what mechanisms, if somebody gets a permit, they say they're going to do everything they're supposed to do, and then they don't, what remediation, what does the town have to fall back on? It appears in its current form, this bylaw is silent about that. Is that what we want?
Well, Al, isn't all of the bylaws enforceable by the newly named building commissioner and his group?
Well, I'm asking specifically on this particular bylaw that's going to go before town meeting. And I think we ought to be prepared. I think your response is a good one, Betsy. The question really is, what are the mechanisms that are available? I think we should at least sort of flesh them out and think about, and maybe even talk, with the building inspector about that, and just have a conversation. I'd like to know more. I would expect people in good faith would absolutely want to comply with this, but there is always an outlier, and it's good to know, what do you do? How do you handle it? That's the only point I'm trying to raise.
Right. Well, since they've been doing it for years, yeah. It's not gonna, the people that currently have accessory apartments that are renting them, I don't know what their next move will be, but it would be surprising to me if they decided to then start accumulating paperwork to comply with this.
And there's nobody to enforce it. There's no manpower,
Right, I mean,
personpower to.
You've got no one to enforce this, right?
Well, we have what we have.
Yeah.
But there is a section in the bylaw itself about enforcement that covers the entire bylaw.
Yes, exactly right.
So we wouldn't need and Al makes a good point, how are we going to enforce? Where we're taking out an existing provision of the bylaw and swapping it with this new provision. There it is, yeah, section 900. Under administration, 900 sets forth all enforcement for the entire bylaw, which would include this new section.
Right.
But it doesn't add anybody to
Specific, no.
a person, right? In order to do that enforcement or increase the current staff of municipal services
No,
to do the enforcement.
Correct.
And it does not do today.
I think it would be the same as any other article in the zoning bylaw, that if it came to an enforcement issue, it would stem from a complaint made to that department that so-and-so is behaving outside the scope of what they believe to be allowable, and that would be the mechanism that it would trigger, not that anybody's looking for it. That's my thought.
I think Al's point is that there's nothing on currently that states what those penalties would be. Right, and what is the enforcement, not only the enforcement mechanism, but what is the recourse if somebody's out of compliance?
Right. And so,
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Brian brought up an excellent point with the overview, and everybody in this room is familiar that we've had and have a good zoning bylaw, great planning board, good building inspector, et cetera. But there's always the issue about, okay, somebody creates a bunch of ADUs. They're intended for parents, siblings, whatever. And at some point, somebody's going to say, well, this is empty. I would like to earn some money from it. et cetera. And then what do? We just say, okay, we've got a lot of verbos and Airbnbs in the town. Again, I'm not trying to create a scenario. I'm simply thinking, if we think this through, do we want to think about something, maybe after this bylaw is passed? It's just to be sort of preventative rather than reactive. That's the only reason I bring this up.
The bylaw does call out that it is illegal to have short-term rentals, so there is something on the books.
Right. But as far as I know, Betsy, there is no mechanism or tool that
No, there-
anybody can use and say, okay, you got to stop this right now, or else we're going to do poop. There's no poop.
Well, there is, we just don't use it, for whatever reason.
Okay,
You make a good point. It's section 900 of the bylaw, and Rebecca's just pulling it up now. Section 911 sets forth penalties of $50 a day.
Okay.
Inflation, let's keep going.
that works for me.
And we can do something called a non-criminal disposition, sometimes known as a 21D, the non-criminal tickets that some municipal enforcement agencies use. So they write a ticket. If you don't pay it, you go to district court. There's also an opportunity just generally for municipalities to file enforcement actions in Superior Court, whether it's zoning, Board of Health, any sort of municipal land use issue. But that of course takes a lot of work and resources when you start getting into lawsuits.
Well, those are excellent points, and I think as you read that out, Brian, it gives me comfort, and it sounds like we're well defended in the event of. So that's good. Thank you.
Sure.
No, my understanding is.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Where,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
yeah, it's done, been on that road before.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but, okay. But, so there's, we've got the article. And then there's a follow-up article. There's 2 articles on the accessory apartments, right?
Yep, Article 3.
So the other one, I believe, is the exception.
The exemption one.
Exemption, yes.
So what's
And
that
that's
about?
just about the special permit, not special permit anymore.
So that's just correcting what we previously had in
And
there.
adding a section 6. Saying everything but the ADU would be required under needing a special permit.
Okay.
Could somebody just refresh me with, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little confused about, what do you think, when we say it's by right? You can construct it.
You don't need a special permit.
So you don't need, that speaks directly to special permits. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
There's no board that is gonna decide whether you're worthy. You still get a building permit,
Because we'll all through the.
but you don't need special permission from anyone. You just go in and apply.
I just want to be. No, I don't want to get too into the reason.
So a non-conforming lot.
Yeah.
This will become more non-conforming, I assume. So, and it doesn't have to go to the zoning board.
So if you have a non-conforming lot, you got a single family dwelling, you're looking to put an ADU. I think you still need to comply with lot coverage.
Setbacks.
Yes, but if you've got a non-conforming lot that has not enough frontage, right? You're not adding square footage, you're reconfiguring what you're existing. So now you've got the same setbacks and you've got the same frontage. So it's not conforming because it would not be buildable today if you were starting from ground zero.
Right.
So by adding this, what he's asking is if by adding this apartment, are you making a non-conforming lot more non-conforming by adding a separate unit?
Section 9 does address that specifically.
It does?
Yeah, it talks about if the principal dwelling to which an ADU will be added is a pre-existing non-conforming structure or is located on a non-conforming lot, and the alteration or extension to add an ADU will increase such non-conformity or create a new non-conformity, that's what you were alluding to.
Mhm.
Said extension or alteration shall be subject to general law, chapter 401, 40A section 6, which I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's
In
a
section 401 of the zoning bylaw.
special permit.
Provided, however, that a special permit shall not be required, but a majority of the zoning board of appeals shall make a finding that proposed alteration of the structure is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure or use. So it sort of replaces the special permit with the majority of the zoning board of appeals.
You still gotta get their vote.
Right.
So you still have to get permission.
So that wouldn't be by right.
Yeah, so it's not by right.
So Brian, any.
But it doesn't require a special. That's what they had to say.
Historical districts at all?
I don't think so.
We don't have historic districts, we have historic houses.
Okay, I'm just.
No, I'm being fresh.
We have deed historic districts, right? And it's that was my, coming from the left field question. I don't know if it's relevant or pertinent. Did it
That's a good
occur?
question.
We do not have restrictions on historic districts. We have restrictions on historic properties. So it would probably fall under the heading of what those restrictions are.
Designated
One house is basically.
Which I think is, we're going into the weeds now, and we're drowning.
Puzzle pieces eventually, yeah.
Okay, good times. My suggestion is when you go in there, save yourselves, have a compare and contrast so that people understand what we have now, what we're changing it, and what we have to do.
Okay.
And you're gonna save yourself a lot of heartache.
Advice.
I'm not presenting, but I will let Chris know.
Right, well, somebody should, yeah, because these
I
questions are,
apologize, but that memo that you alluded to that you sent.
I just sent to you,
Cause I tried to look for it, we couldn't find it.
I just
You
sent it out.
Oh.
Because I didn't see it before.
So now I can read it after the discussion.
You can.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
We would get fun for it.
Excellent. Are you looking for us to vote these tonight?
That would be swell. I would like that.
Are we comfortable voting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we get much, I think we've teased out what the differences are. I'm not criticizing that, I just think that. it
Has the
would be-
planning board voted 2 and 3?
Did the planning board approve these?
Have they,
Yeah, oh yeah, they had a public hearing.
they've approved 2 and 3?
Yep.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, can I have a motion for Article 2 of the special
Move to
town meeting?
approve Article 2 of the special town meeting.
Second,
We have Al,
roll call?
roll call.
Yes. Yes.
Chuck,
Aye.
Teddy,
Aye.
JR,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Sean, Betsy, aye.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, cool.
That 8? Yeah, it's only 8, so one missing. I got 8.
Move to approve articles, in the special town meeting.
Second.
Okay, Al,
Aye.
okay, Chuck,
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Friend, aye.
John, aye.
Betsy, aye.
Kathleen, I.
Okay. So we've now done 2 and 3. 800, yes? We all happy with that? All right, cool. Now for the big show here, the drum roll, yep.
Do you wanna do any of this with me? Or you want to just say?
I'm here with pom poms.
So I would like to say, just so that Megan is kindly come to do this presentation. Who in this room has not heard the MBTA presentation? Because they have done everything but stand in the parking lot at Brothers and done it. So, and they probably have done that as well. Anybody not heard it? Everybody's heard it?
Ready to vote.
Okay, so that's gonna give you some sense of the information that you need to, how deep you need to go tonight.
Super.
Super. I don't wanna
Yeah, we can.
cost you more
Yeah,
pain
do
than
you wanna
is
put it up
necessary.
and we'll just run through it? Then maybe what we should do is just ask questions.
I have none.
Okay.
I have none.
I think that the question is going to be at this town meeting, since if we're piggybacking on what happened last fall,
Yeah.
is what is it that we are risking what is the downside to saying yes to the state? And getting us out of potential jail on the grants.
Yeah, okay.
So I think that at town meeting, if the questions are gonna be, what grants are in danger? Of which I don't know if you have an answer for that, because, good. What grants are in danger? Are any of the grants that we're counting on that were approved going to be taken away from us? And what is the downside of allowing this to comply with what the state has mandated?
Yeah, okay, well then let's, why don't we skip past this, we'll just kind of run through this quickly, and we're not gonna read it.
Right, great.
We had sort of decided we were gonna read the slides, but we made sure that our messaging was kind of, consistent, but since you've seen most of this, this is basically what we're gonna cover, so we can go past this. You all know what the MBTA Communities Act is. I think we're up to hundred and 52 towns out of the 177 have passed the MBTA Communities, Act,
Do you know where we stand now with the?
Injunction?
Yes, right.
well, so, yeah, let's
Okay.
get to, well, there's a whole, let's talk about that.
Will
We'll
that
just
be
sort of-
resolved before the town meeting?
So the hearing is on June 6th. And I did not know this, so I learned this recently, but I think it's helpful information. And Brian, you can correct me if I've gotten this wrong. But the injunction, if we were to say, like, let's say we won the injunction, that only allows Duxbury to continue to fight. It doesn't mean we don't have to comply.
Okay,
All it means is we can spend more money to continue to fight. And that's a question that I think Duxbury should ask itself. And so I've actually asked for, and I don't think we have an update on this yet, but I've asked for what the town has spent in legal fees up till this day, because it's probably, I don't know, I don't even want to guess, but whatever it is, I've asked to have that number. And then that number, I've also asked the lawyers what the amount of money that it would cost to defend it, to keep going.
Right.
And I do think that that's something that the town should, I didn't know that, I wasn't aware of this, but the town should make a decision
Mhm.
about whether we want to continue to fight the state. And I mean, Milton spent $300,000 on their lawsuit to nowhere. So, okay, so this is just us. Information about our working group. I actually joined the working group because of the disaster at town meeting. I went to town meeting. I didn't know anything about the MBTA Communities Working Group. I hadn't done any of the forums. I didn't even know. I was really excited to learn more information, and I got there and I felt like it was a disaster. I didn't learn anything. There was pitchforks out. Everybody voted no. Everybody felt like they won something. Nobody won anything. And so I was left like, what just happened? And I was like, I'm getting on that committee. So that's why I'm on the committee. Okay, so we hold meetings on Thursdays. We meet like you guys on a regular basis. Next slide. Okay, so this is just, I'll just review this because I think this is helpful. So it requires that we identify 50 acres. We are required to pass a zoning plan through town meeting by mid-July. So we have till July before we become non-compliant, basically. We are in a zone of okay with the state because we told them we were going to continue to work on it. So we're not like Marshfield. Marshfield is non-compliant, and they just had a $250,000 grant stripped from them because they did not petition to continue to go. So after our town meeting, if we don't pass it by mid-July, we would go out of compliance, and that's when our grants would start to be at risk. You all know this, we're not required to build anything or pay for any housing. We only need to make it legal for this to happen. Okay. Feedback from town meeting, we can just keep scrolling. So essentially what we tried to do in this working group was come up with a plan that would not produce building of really any housing, or make it very difficult to do so, because that's kind of what we heard at town meeting, was that nobody wanted the Bonji site, nobody wanted big dense housing. So we took the approach of trying to zone properties where multifamily housing already exists. Is everybody kind of clear on that strategy? It was basically born out of what happened at town meeting.
And I think the terminology that most people are hearing is paper compliance.
Yes, we were told originally not to say that, but that's become a thing. So whatever, yes, paper compliance, checking the box, that's what I always say. Okay, so we can go down to legalities of the MBTA Community Act. So as you know, at the time in November,
there was still a chance that the law would be considered unconstitutional because Milton had not yet gone to court over it. So again, we were in a kind of state of like, well, maybe we're okay, we'll see what happens. But then in January, the SJC ruled against Milton and they found that the law is enforceable and the Attorney General has the authority to enforce it. So this is where we get into the lawsuit. So we are seeking an exemption from compliance in a lawsuit arguing that the law is an unfunded mandate. The success of this lawsuit is uncertain based on legal precedent. And I think most people that at least I've talked to, and I think even Greg kind of said the unfunded mandate piece is a little shaky ground because the state can just fund it. So it can be found unfunded and then the state will fund it. And so we don't really have much leg to stand on, but it is a avenue to pursue. The other thing, again, that I just mentioned that I just learned is that this date of June 6th is not an end. It's the beginning of yet another stage. So it's not like we're going to win on June 6th. We're going to win the right to continue to argue with the state about it being an unfunded mandate or about it, the legality of it, essentially.
Will there be a decision on the 6th? In my understanding that it wouldn't be that.
Yes.
quick.
Can I speak to that? So
Sure, yes,
there's
please.
nothing, just to make sure we're on the same page, the hearing has already been held. The hearing for our request for an injunction, and there's several other towns that are also asking for an injunction. All of them were heard 2 weeks ago. The judge is aware of all of our town meetings, aware of the dates, and has indicated that he's likely to rule before then. You just never know. The judge is not subject to a particular date by which
Mhm.
he or she needs to issue a ruling, but typically as a courtesy, they will. This is a big deal. So I'm sure the judge is being very careful about getting it right because it's likely to be appealed. With that said, if the judge rules in advance of town meeting, which we hope he will, and we get our injunction, we get the request, to Megan's point, the relief we get, the win, so to speak, is that we don't have to pass anything at town meeting right away. It doesn't mean that we win the case at the end of the day. It could, but we won't know for some longer period of time while the litigation itself moves forward. So the injunction itself is just a piece of a much larger litigation.
Which is, I think, kind of plays to Megan's point. I will follow up tomorrow on that again too. I want to know how much it's cost us so far and how much they think it's going to cost us to pursue this, because that is an impact
But if the
on.
town passes this at the special town meeting, then there'd be no
It's
need to
done.
continue it.
Right, there is no
Sorry.
You
continuing.
can still, right, correct. You wouldn't need to.
But there'd be no reason to do it.
No, but the other towns may go forward, and we can talk about what will happen. So if other towns go forward with it and decide to spend the money and they end up winning.
I think that's the thing you gotta hear from
Yeah.
people is that, if we can hold on for a little bit longer with this, but if they know it's gonna be, continue to spend money to do it, everyone's aware of the financial situation right now, and that,
Well, I'm curious too, is that there's been a number of towns that have passed it. Right?
155.
Most-
Most of them have passed it. We are one of like only 30 towns that are holdouts
Yeah.
at this point. And again, my question would be to what end, to why? What's the point? We're not even, we're following Hingham and Braintree. They're also actually looked online. There are like 3 or 4 other towns, all who've pursued paper compliance,
Mhm.
and whom have, succeeded. So the Attorney General, and in fact, what was actually really quite interesting about the hearing that just took place 2 weeks ago, I sort of read 2 different versions of it. The Clipper did a really nice job of describing what happened. But the Attorney General actually said, no, Duxbury, we're cool with paper compliance.
Yeah.
We just want you to comply.
Yeah.
So they even actually took the step to actually say to the lawyer, this is actually a good, we're fine with it. Because the judge was like, well, why are you doing this? The Attorney General's like, it's cool, we're giving them the option, we're giving towns the option. If you want housing, you can do it this way, but we have to have you comply, we have to have you at least do the overlay.
And I think we shouldn't, I agree that we shouldn't use paper compliance, because if those landowners wanted to do this,
They could.
they could. So we're relying on the fact that it doesn't, in our opinion, doesn't make sense to take down what's already built and try and build something better. So it's not really a we're compliant.
We're compliant, yeah,
We're compliant.
you could take the village
Exactly
down.
right.
We'll talk about the 2 sites and what would have to
Yeah.
happen, but
This is the best risk.
One,
If you don't want to.
have the selectmen moved on this at all?
Look at it.
Have they voted?
We haven't voted on this particular article yet.
I am asking them to though, at next meeting, because I didn't.
We
vote on it.
we're gonna vote on it.
Okay, before time meeting.
And
Yes.
I think I'll leave it just that.
There you go.
I won't say another way.
Well, don't disappoint us now. We like
No,
when
I
we
won't.
talk.
I promise.
Okay,
All right.
go ahead.
Okay, so we can skip past this. We kind of talked about the legalities. Okay, so the benefits of complying with the MBTA communities law. So originally when we started this the first time, the state was only withholding 4 categories of grants to states, to towns. They've now increased that to 17 state grants. So we now would be eligible for 17 state grants, and they all kind of fit under categories of upgrading infrastructure, protecting areas from storms and flooding. There actually is infrastructure projects related to schools now. A town actually just recently had one of the towns that's not compliant lost a school budget, a school grant as well. I just mentioned, sorry,
For mental health.
for mental health. Marshfield just lost a $250,000 grant, got pulled. And one of the things I think people don't understand about this, which I think people will know, which I think is an interesting thing to find out is, so the sidewalk project, everybody's familiar with it. It took us 20 years to get these sidewalks in Washington Street. It's a 3-part series. So they had their initial grant is $500,000. It's been awarded but not received, but it actually is to cover the work that'll be done this summer. They actually have to apply for 2 more grants to the tune of almost $1 million. That's not covered, but we would lose. So we would get 1/3 of our sidewalk project completed. Yes.
Do we have a list of the potential grants that we're losing?
Yeah, so Rebecca, I think we put it on the draft. I think we've got a pretty good one. We've been working on that because it's the issue, and this is something that we've grappled with on an ongoing basis with regard to the grants, is that unfortunately, the sidewalk grants that they are going to apply for hasn't hit it yet because they don't need it yet. So it's a little bit incomplete. So we know right now that if you took a look back over 2 years, there are $2 million worth of grants that we would not get. So had this been 2 years ago, we would have lost $2 million worth of grants. We know for a fact those fit into that category. So we have between 1 and 2 million for sure that we know would fit into these categories in the next 12 months, but there could be more that we don't even know people are applying for to complete projects because they just haven't hit the books yet.
Isn't Complete Streets a federal fund? Federal
No.
grant? That's state?
It's a state infrastructure project.
Can I just add, you're right, it started with 4 grants. As part of the litigation, there was an affidavit filed by the general counsel of the state agency that's running this program, this MBTA program. And he, in his affidavit, said that it's the current policy of the state administration, the Haley Driscoll administration, that all discretionary grants, whatever those mean, this goes to your question about what are the grants, started as 4. Now it's whatever a discretionary grant is in the Commonwealth is going to be subject to compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. So it just compounds upon this issue of what are the grants? Well, for us, the list keeps getting bigger and bigger.
It excludes the schools and it includes chapter 90. And those are the
But
only
only-
2 that we know are,
But infrastructure schools is included.
but that would be, grant, so that would be the school building.
Or this one is a mental health one that was taken.
Right,
Is-
but I'm just saying, the ones that
Yeah.
aren't going to get touched are chapter 90 and chapter 70.
Yeah.
This is all those grants.
All
Yeah.
the list of the grants on the left-hand column, toward the bottom. Duxbury state grants awarded. It's in the-
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Right on the MBTA working group webpage, the list of the grants is there. You guys want to look.
As it stands today.
As it stands, yeah.
As of April of 25.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But grants that haven't even been created yet. Right.
Yeah, there's no way to predict.
That's the point.
Yeah.
The only reason why I know about the sidewalk grants is because I called Elaine Filbert because I wanted to meet with the sidewalk group.
Sure.
In the committee, and we started talking about it, and that's when she told me about the grants that this one is at risk. She's like, better not get pulled because we need the money for the summer. And we hadn't received it yet. As of today, I don't know if we have yet, but then she told me about the other 2 that she has to apply for.
Sure.
So it's like, we're finding out things as we kind of go along, which is a little scary. The other thing, and this may be a little bit of a long shot, but to be honest with you, now that it's gotten down to 150 towns have passed this and we're like the wayward 20. The state could just say, we're gonna do your zoning for you. Like, we're gonna choose a greenfield and you guys are a pain in the ass, and so we're doing it. And we don't want to lose control over our own zoning. So this is a way for us to decide where we put it as opposed to the state deciding for us. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the maps quickly, just so that everybody's clear about like what we did. We chose 2 sites. We're calling it MCOT Kingston, MCOT Tremont. So that's basically Kingston, and I'll show you more specifically, is the village of Duxbury, and the way we overlaid it. There is the exact same density that the state requires that's already there. So if a builder was to come in, if they knocked down the village, they could only build the number of units that are there. So there's actually no building. And we were really careful with that site because it is close to where the Bonji site was. And we didn't want to sort of interrupt the flow of, or get back involved with that area where we knew they didn't want it. Re-inflame, exactly.
Is that all
Yes.
one owner currently?
It is all one owner, yep. And then we also
Welch,
chose,
yeah.
sorry,
Yes.
Welch, yes.
Yeah.
They run it, but it's a
It's a co-op.
co-op.
that owns it.
So, but the corporation, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not individual owners, it's a
Right.
corporate ownership, it's
But there's
co-op.
nothing to preclude someone coming in and buying Bonjis and setting up a 40B there.
Absolutely
That could happen
nothing.
anytime.
That can happen
It has
anytime,
nothing to do with this,
yeah,
No, I know.
yeah.
but, in fact,
That never. got
knock
out.
me over
It
a
was
feather,
they
if
shut
that
everything
doesn't
down.
happen.
No, that was the problem. That was information that I wished I had had that day, that it was like we were saving Bonjis, but we're not saving Bonjis.
Yeah.
We're not
Turkeys are
saving,
gone.
no, exactly.
Megan, can I just add on
Yeah.
these sites, it's important also to appreciate that this time around, the community was involved.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Selecting those sites, so the working group put together, I think it was 5 different options.
Mhm.
And then we had focus groups, or not focus groups, or whatever we could call it, open houses,
Open houses.
basically. And had a presentation, had maps on the walls, and asked folks to vote in a straw poll. We had a little piece of paper and said, what's your favorite sites for compliance? And the village, Island Creek was number 1. And then the village was number 2. So that's how we got to those 2.
Good point. Thank you. I forgot about that. And we also chose, so Island Creek was a part of the original plan last year. It's pretty much remained the same. You want to go down to the next slide and I can actually show the, so the inside, I'll just stand up here because it's easier, but inside the yellow lines is essentially the overlay. We had to get to 50 acres, which we've done. So you see green space here, but again, the density is the same. So there's no additional building. They could rearrange it, I suppose, but they can't put more housing than's already there at the village. Here, there is the possibility that they could build units, but they're at their capacity for their wastewater treatment. They would need to take the tops off some of them. So they would go from 3 floors to 4 floors. There's a couple back here that are 4 floors. We did this is the only green space that's here. It's owned by the church. We took over their parking lot, which of course they would have to keep their parking lot. And then they have this little space in between back there. But again, this is also, the church is tied into their wastewater. It's all the same wastewater. So again, could it happen? Yes. Is it likely? No. And it would be very expensive.
You did realize that these on the handout were reversed.
That's
If
why I'm
the
not
stable-
using them. Yes, when I went to print them, and that's why I didn't bring them to my last presentation, because somebody wanted them to be flipped and caused a little drama, but we did it. Here we are. These are right. Okay, so
Those
if
are
we,
correct, these are right.
yes, these are correct. Okay, so if you go down one more slide, why we propose zoning, we talked about this, but
John, you have a question?
yes.
Going back to the focus groups, the justification around these 2 sites, did you get a sense that people chose these because of the already existing structures on them
Yes,
and covering the majority, if not all, of the eligible units?
the feeling that I got, I was at both of them, was nobody really cared about building at Island Creek. I mean, it's on the highway, it's already so overbuilt anyway, people didn't really care about it. And the village, because of the size of it, because of how close we made it, with the density, that seemed to be the one that made the most sense.
Okay, so
The other ones could have produced, it would have been hard, for example, Southgate was one of them. It would have been really hard to say no building there. Cause it kind of does need to be upgraded, and so there was just like, and they're spread out a little bit more, so it was just gonna be a little bit dicey. This was the one that was really like a guarantee not gonna be built.
As much as you can guarantee anything.
Right.
Exactly. We have to, I mean, not any denser. Village cannot be denser than it already is. That is a certainty. Okay, so this approach has been approved by the state. We talked about that, Braintree and Hingham. There are actually 4 other towns that have also done that. The expanded development rights will create little opportunity to add new units. We talked about that. We talked about the fact that it's a condo and cooperative board, so that evicting residents is going to be kind of hard. And then the wastewater treatment is at capacity or near capacity. Okay, so our strategy for compliance was to create a zoning plan that complies with the MBTA Communities Act, zone where existing property or existing multifamily housing exists, which would be hard to do. We want to maintain the eligibility for state money and avoid enforcement action. And if the law becomes invalid, so as an example, if we decided, if the law firm comes back and says, okay, if you win on June 6th, let's say on June 6th, they come forward and they tell us there's an injunction, we can move forward. But the law firm says, well, it's gonna be between 150 and 200 grand, and we decide we don't want to do that. If the other towns move forward and they end up succeeding 2 years from now, and it becomes an unfunded mandate, or it becomes illegal or whatever, we could repeal the bylaw. And that's kind of what I think the planning board is committed to do, is to take the step of repealing it if it were to be invalidated by the state. Because there was some discussion last time about, well, if we pass the zoning, we're gonna get stuck with it forever. We're not gonna get stuck with it forever. We'll just repeal it.
I think though that it is important to let people know that while it is in effect, it is in effect.
Correct.
So if somebody was going to use this as a means of increasing their density or building something at Island Creek, and they apply for those permits while this is in effect, it's legal and binding.
Yes,
So,
for sure.
yeah, it doesn't wipe the slate clean. It only stops what could happen from that day forward. And all zoning changes are effective the next day.
Yeah.
It's not like you're gonna do this and it does not gonna be in effect to even July 1st or January 1st. It is effective immediately. So, and I'm not trying to defunct this because I think that you've come up with something that could work for us and protect. I mean, losing any grant money now is going to be,
Ludicrous.
well, it's going to make a very difficult situation impossible.
Yeah.
So that's huge. But to be clear with people, yes, you can withdraw this zoning, you can change the zoning, but it does not eliminate the fact that it is available to people during the time that it is in effect.
Yes, I mean, like the church could sell their tiny little, I guess they've only got 2 or 3 acres back there. So they could sell the 5 acres behind or on the side too, though.
With the parking lot.
Or
Yeah,
they
so
could,
without the parking lot, I think it's only 2, they have to. keep the
they could
parking.
build housing of their own.
Yeah, they could build housing of their own now anyway, I suppose.
They could sell the church.
The church should be sold,
Or it could be a
actually,
40B.
Or it could be a 40.
Yeah.
It could be any number of things.
Choices.
I'm not saying that I want to downplay the fact that we could repeal it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no,
to
sure.
make people understand that when it's in effect,
The
it's in
law,
effect.
yes.
The law's the law.
Exactly. And then this is what we have upcoming. We have 2 more forums, informational sessions that we're doing May 28th next week, and then June 4th during the day. We've already had the public hearing. The planning board obviously supports this and voted in favor of it. And then we have a special town meeting on June 16th. And yeah, so we're hoping that
What was the attendance at the public hearing?
none,
Okay.
which is good, actually, I thought, because there's not a lot of opposition. But I don't think a lot of people are paying attention. Yes.
They didn't come the last time either, and then 800 showed up the day.
Yeah.
of the meeting.
Last time, we learned, and we learned it. To vote for the override as well, the internet is alive with music,
Sure is.
and has there been a lot of chatter about this version? Of what's going on? Are they, again, as angry as they were before, and are we gonna be looking at that kind of meeting?
I don't think so. I don't think they're as angry because we don't have, I think the community was a very strong component, the Bonji's community, like mounted a big response, and they came to forums and they were really mad. And so they made themselves known before. We haven't gotten that kind. There's a lot of like misinformation, like people are saying, well, they're always like, oh, the grants don't matter, and Sweezy's working on a legislation, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it passed legislature by almost 100%. They're not repealing this. They don't have to, they are not doing that. So there's been a lot of that misinformation, like we're saying that no building can be made and they're gonna build these huge houses and, we're not saying that. We're saying, of course it can be done. It's just gonna be unlikely. And, if it is gonna be done, it's gonna be done at Island Creek. And does anybody really have a huge problem with that? And so that's what we're saying. And we're saying grants. So there is a little bit of misinformation for sure. But I don't know if it's enough to get the numbers out against it. I just hope we have enough numbers to come and support it. It'll be a matter of people showing up. Always.
I think you'll have a crowd.
Yeah.
I'm not worried.
Well, we also have the 2 warrants now too. For the fire.
The 2 articles.
2 articles,
For the
yeah, so
public
that's
safety.
gonna get a lot of people that will come for that.
Going back to the first time that this was introduced, and kind of what the loud, opposition justification was around it. It was stress of services, of town services, it was impact on schools down the line. Are we in kind of trying to get out in front of that? Is Dr. Klingman planning on also speaking to what enrollment projected impacts could look like? Or will town services talk to the validity of a concern over septic systems being over throttled? In that sense.
It's a good idea to have the DPW maybe come in, or someone come and talk about the services with regards to wastewater, where it currently is. We know we've been told that it's at capacity. It'd be good for someone to come and confirm that. But no, because we're not anticipating that this actually would result in housing, like significant housing, because of the limitations of the site and the location and the church.
And they would have to
itself.
manage their own wastewater treatment.
And they have to,
But I
yeah.
also think it's important to be able to have. the-
Oh, I don't disagree with you.
And speak to that because, again, I think one of the pitfalls of the MBTA. Just in its entirety is that. It's not like a citizen petition where you have a strong group of folks who brought this originally in. It was. Something being presented on behalf of a working group to a town, and there wasn't really, I'll say, a whole lot of personal investment into making sure that this thing either went one way or the other. It was, here are the facts, how do we feel about it?
Well, I would actually say that did not happen. The facts were not presented at that.
Well,
So it was absence of facts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that was just a disaster.
Yes.
And in the absentia of facts, we ended up getting a narrative that was. Insane, so I'm hoping that this time we will have we are presenting facts now.
Yeah.
Regardless, this is the presentation that's going to be given at town meeting. People are going to be able to ask questions and hear directly from the working group. But I think it's a good idea to talk about the wastewater and making sure. But the other thing is, and I know that we can do a feasibility study, right? At some point, or we had an opportunity to do a feasibility study.
No.
Affordable housing.
Are you talking about, yeah, we're always doing this.
Yeah.
Either the affordable housing component or the fiscal impact analysis. Which
Yeah.
one are you?
Maybe the fiscal impact analysis.
The one about, like what Sean was
So
mentioning.
we needed to have done that last year.
That's part of the argument about the unfunded mandate, to say that the state, the state should have done that in the first place. Because communities can't evaluate, in the absence of that information, can't evaluate whether you need more firefighters or teachers or that. sort
But
of
couldn't we have done that had we done it sooner? Wasn't there some?
deal.
Well, if we don't know what they're gonna build, you can't.
Yeah,
That's what I was told from MAPC and OCPC when I asked them to do it. They
They
said
said
they
they
don't
couldn't figure
recommend it because they don't know how many bedrooms the developers would be putting in.
It's all pretend.
It's all,
Yeah.
exactly.
People are spending money to create a report that is basically not based in fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't do it for us when I asked, because the working group asked.
Well, that gives me hope
To
that they
ask.
wouldn't. That they wouldn't spend the money just for laughs. Cause it may.
Yeah,
make no
they
sense.
advised against it,
Yeah.
literally. Yeah, Ivy Nest or.
and again, this is the point of picking places where we probably won't see housing.
Oh, okay. Friend, you had something?
Yes, at the
I
last
tell you.
meetings prior to the special for the original MBTA committee, Mary McKinnon made a presentation regarding the financial impact to the community if that development and how she related it to previous developments, and that once a project gets built like that, and this was when it was Bonji's and there would have been new construction, which we don't have now, there would have been a positive financial impact to the town for taxes. And that obviously if a bunch of people moved into an apartment complex at one time, they all wouldn't have kindergarten children or whatever, and the impact of the schools would be not that great, and that it would come in over time and would be easily absorbed by the town. So it's a pretty good presentation. And I think she also talked to some of the other issues related to again, it was more related to the new construction. But it was fairly, frankly, positive. This is even less impactful than that, so.
I have a lot of kindergartners at the village.
I
Yeah.
think if there was the emphasis was on the increase of cost of public safety, fire and police.
Yeah, well, because it was,
With
a greenfield site.
the services that would be affected positively.
Sure.
Katie?
Was there a strong reaction from the village?
No.
No.
Not at all, because they're not intending on selling. And it doesn't change their ability to be more dense. There's no reason for them to, no benefit to them knocking it down and putting up this, monstrosity to make more money because it's the same, they can't get more units than I currently have. It'd be really complicated too, because like my mom lives there and Eric's mom lives there and they both own. So they'd have to like get rid of a bunch of senior citizens and throw them out. I don't know how they would even manage it.
It's a time thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess wait it out. It'll take them a while though. So they did not care. Brian actually met with them directly.
Yeah, I had a meeting with them, Ted, and it was more to share information about what we're proposing for the property. And they just wanted to be informed. Didn't have a strong opinion one way or the other. Just wanted to make sure they were up to speed and knew what the impacts, if any, would be. And as long as it was status quo, then they weren't going to be too troubled by it. But there was no endorsement. I want to make clear, nobody was speaking on behalf of all the residents. I mean, there might be residents there who say, I don't want this. But folks I spoke with.
But there'd be no downside. There'd be no downside for them. I mean, if they wanted to sell it.
Yeah, I guess.
as a-
But yeah, it was just more information sharing, as I said, and I offered to come back and speak with a larger group of residents if they wanted that, and
It doesn't really
Quiet.
impact them.
no, not really, no.
Let's vote.
Okay,
Move to approve Article 1, amend the zoning bylaws, add a new section of 440 entitled MBTA Communities Overlay District, and amend the zoning map overlay map to add MBTA Communities Overlay District map.
Second,
okay. Any other questions? You speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, Al,
Aye.
Chuck, I.
Did I?
Yeah, right.
Brenda,
No,
Betsy, aye.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, 800. Oh,
Good job. A lot of time.
I'm sorry, what?
I spent a lot of time.
Oh my God, this is,
It's gonna be really sad if it doesn't pass. I'm gonna cry. It's a lot of time,
yeah, well,
for a lot of people. There's like seven of us and
You gotta figure out a new social life now after.
no kidding. No kidding. I got better things to do than be trolled online too, I can be honest with you.
yeah, don't read it.
I know, that's always your advice to me. Don't read it, Megan. Okay, well, you don't need me anymore. I'm
Nope,
gonna
you're
go.
done. Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah, thank you.
We're gonna be back here to go over the rest of this, on Thursday.
Oh, yeah, I'll take it back. It's wrong
And,
anyway, 'cause I post the things.
Mary will be joining us then, and, we'll be going
You can
over,
keep it if you want.
Yeah,
a couple of the things, the citizens petitions, we just found out. We just got a word back on who the citizen is that did this, so I know Rainey's trying to see if they'll come in on Thursday to present their articles. I'm not sure if they'll be able to do that or not. If not, we'll try to do it on the 29th. Because I do want to hear from them, on those. I don't know where the numbers came from that are published in the article. I don't think you all have an idea of where those numbers came in. They're very specific, so I'm sure they're tied to something concrete. There's also gonna, on the 4th of July celebration, and I'm not gonna call any of us out. But you guys all know that this 25,000 isn't for this summer, right? Right. You know that? Yeah.
No.
I'm looking at, does the select board know that?
I'm listening.
So one of the things that's interesting about this is that $25,000 would be for July 26. We have $25,000 that we voted in at the 24 town meeting for the parade this summer. So that's a fun fact.
That's a great thing.
I think I knew it.
I,
You did not know it. So just so that everybody's aware that so that they can be thinking about that. This $25,000 is not for this summer. It is for the summer after that. Now, what that means if it doesn't get moved out of free cash and we are, are short money for we're gonna be playing the long game anyway, but just so that everybody is clear, this money is not for this summer. So think about that. Yes.
It says so right in the warrant, July 2026.
Yeah, I understand, but I still think people don't get that. What?
Would that 25,000 be removed out of the July 4th parade for this July?
No.
I wouldn't say no
Yeah, what are we?
quickly, because we already have 25,000 that is voted, that is an appropriation that it has passed and the money is sitting there. So we do have $25,000, which is our annual contribution. Where we'll be discussing on Thursday is the shortfall is the fact that the public safety folks did not send a bill, if for lack of a better word, because they used their overtime, which is no longer available because it will be used to cover staffing. So it's kind of sort of more or less also tied in with the two articles, the citizens petition to reinstate the staff that was laid off. So it's gonna be fun. Just, get ready to be confused. And Article 8 on the rock is I think we're going to be talking about IPing that. Because it doesn't change anything other than making the bookkeeping and the statement or the chart of where the money's coming from a little clearer for our town accountant. And I think that we're confused enough without starting to do that. We should maybe take a look at that for next year's town meeting and not start adding it into a special, since it has no import on what we're going to be actually funds that are available for next year. But stay tuned, film at 11. And then the supplemental appropriations, Mary's gonna go over those, so we'll understand. Okay?
As well as capital budget.
Yeah. Yep. So Mary will have all of that. Okay? So stay tuned, film at 11, but the big one will be the citizens petition. And since we just found out who the citizen was, we're still trying to get them to come in, and hopefully if they're listening tonight or somebody that knows who is listening tonight, we really would like to give them an opportunity to come to finance committee and present their case and just clarify where the numbers are coming from. Okay?
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
I.